Hello, everybody, and welcome to our complete set review of Shadows over Innistrad. I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
And we're here to talk about all of the red cards today. This is, of course, being part 2 if you guys are joining us live. But you know what? There's no time like the present, and we got a lot of cards to talk about. So we're going to talk about Breakneck Rider. Now, Breakneck Rider is one of the first kind of real, true, old-school werewolves from the original Innistrad. It's 2 red and a generic mana for a 3/3 human scout werewolf. It's an uncommon, and at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, you transform it, just like the old-school werewolves. Here we have Neckbreaker that it flips into, which is a 4/3. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample, and as of the other werewolves, at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells, you transform it back into Breakneck Rider. So, Brad, I think this is one of those werewolves that you were talking about, like the original Innistrad. Sometimes you didn't have a spell to play, and the werewolf would flip, and then you'd just be dead. And here it goes from a 3/3 to a 4/3, and while your attacking creatures get a bonus, it's not that like overwhelming anymore.
It's a 5/3 trample, which is very powerful, but it's the toughness that really sets these apart to the old Innistrad ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so a 5/3 is going to deal some damage, but you should be able to get 3 power in front of this thing if you didn't cast a spell. And I know this card's going to punish opponents that didn't cast something.
Sure.
And be something very good in the late game, giving your entire team this gigantic push through the red zone whenever your opponent is able to fulfill the requirement.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes you can just kind of wait on the werewolves and be like, well, I know it's going to flip eventually, and then you're going to be in trouble. And if you have more than one werewolf, then that's even better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this card is very good because it's a 3/3 for 3 to begin with.
Sure. And so, speaking of, we have another classic, which is Convicted Killer. First of all, awesome flavor. I love the name of Convicted Killer, period. It's a 3 mana 2/2, a red and 2 generic mana 2/2. It's a common human werewolf, and again, if no spells were cast during last turn, at the beginning of each upkeep, you flip it, and it flips into a 4/4, which is really weird, because we were just talking about a 3/3 going to a 4/3. Now we have a 4/4. However, and this is just good old-fashioned straight, at the beginning of each upkeep, a player casts 2 or more spells, you flip it back over. And so this one goes from a 2/2 to a 4/4, which means to me it's almost even more highly sought than the first one, than Breakneck Rider.
Well, I do think that Breakneck Rider is a better card overall since it starts as a 3/3. But Convicted Killer just seems like the generic card you're looking for to fill out a curve of an aggressive werewolf themed deck. I guess it doesn't have to be werewolf themed, but it'll have a good role in maybe the red-white equipment decks, since you might be able to spend your mana on moving around in equipment, getting this card to flip over and be a really good aggressive threat on the next turn.
Absolutely. So pretty hot. I mean, like ultimately, like the first werewolf and this werewolf are both terrific playable cards in limited. I'm never unhappy playing any of those cards. I want to make sure that it's that I have those in my deck. Some people online are mentioning that maybe there's some connection problems, but I don't know. I don't see any problems, so we're just gonna keep going. Gatstoff Arsonists is next. It's a red and 4 generic mana for a 5/4. It's a common human werewolf, and again, at the beginning of each upkeep, no spells were cast, you transform it into Gatstoff Ravagers. This is a 6/5 with Menace, and it also has the if a player casts 2 or more spells last turn, at the beginning of each upkeep, you flip it back over. So this one, they kind of scale upwards at this point.
Yeah, this is just a pretty decent rate since it's a decent 5-drop in an aggressive deck. Just being able to be a 5/4 stats, it's gonna probably be bigger than most creatures before it. And then once it's a 6/5 menace, that's pretty powerful. I mean, it's kind of funny because a 5/4 and a 6/5, the menace might not be that beneficial since it's usually going to trade with 2 middling creatures or a big creature along with a smaller block. But with a trick or a pump spell, this card can go a long way.
Right, can get super good, super fast. One of those spells that, I mean, I don't know, like how many is too many of this card? That's what I always kind of think about for these types of creatures. Dubs?
Yeah, I think like 2. Yeah, 2 would be a lot. Like, I mean, you don't want too many 5s in your deck because you do want to like curve out. It also depends on how clues really interact with how you're like developing in the early stages of a game. Maybe like a lot of expensive cards is fine because you can like pop a clue and play a 3-drop or a removal spell, and you can really bridge up to these cards.
Right. Fair enough. So yeah, these are one of those creatures. It's like because it has the lower toughness and you're paying 5 mana for it, but then it flips over to 6/5, which is still good, but it's probably going to just 2 for 1 or creature plus trick or whatever. I don't know. These cards are kind of hard to evaluate sometimes. We also have Gyre Reach Bandit. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a rare 3/2 human rogue werewolf. It has haste, and at the beginning of each upkeep, no spells were cast. You transform him into the Vilden Pack Alpha, a 4/3 that whenever a werewolf enters the battlefield under your control, you may transform it just instantly. Just right there, how you doing? My werewolves are awesome. And again, at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells, you transform him back. So this is another one of those that goes from a 3/2 to a 4/3. The toughness is lower, so this is actually you can kind of deal with it, essentially. But it also has a really cool ability on the back end where you could just kind of like leave it out there and don't have to attack with it just because you're getting such value over getting things transformed automatically.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that bad of a rate. It feels like a very... I don't think it's constructed playable in many circumstances. I would have to just see it to believe it.
Right.
But haste isn't that bad of an ability, especially when you're being hyper aggressive.
Sure.
And so even if it's just a 3/2 haste, when you compile that with 2 other creatures your opponent only has 1, you're getting a lot of damage and a trade's happening.
Right. I don't know. For a 3/2 is like a 3-mana 3/2. Obviously, I think in limited this card is easily playable. You're always going to play because you want it to be aggressive, and you can be aggressive. Constructed though, I don't know, man. 2 toughness is tough.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it depends. You wouldn't be playing this card and attacking into other decks like that. It could be something in the sideboard or what have you. I don't really know per se, but it seems great and limited. I don't know if it's going to see any constructive.
Yeah. Struck.
I don't know what I'm out of it.
Thunderstruck? Yeah.
I'm very thunderstruck by the Velden Pack Alpha.
Yeah, and so is the Gyre Reach Bandit. But regardless, we're going to keep on moving. Kessig Forgemaster is a red and a generic mana 2/1, an uncommon human shaman werewolf, and whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 1 damage to that creature. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, you transform it into a Flameheart werewolf because its chest gets all glowy. And it's a 3/2, and whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 2 damage to that creature. So it starts off tough to block, tough to attack into, and then goes to really difficult to block, and you're probably not going to attack into it.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting about just how a lot of these, we've seen this before in Ashmouth Hound, where it's always when a creature blocks it, right?
Right.
But being able to stop aggressive creatures and even block, it seems like it just rules combat. And with a trick or a burn spell or even something cheap and efficient, it's going to be able to take down a lot of bigger threats. So I really like this card. I think it's going to be one of the higher pick aggressive cards in each pack.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm playing red and white, I want Kessig Forgemaster on 2. It's already a 2-drop. It's okay if it doesn't flip immediately. It's going to be really difficult to block in the early game, and it seems like one of those core red or core uncommons that you want for that archetype.
Mm-hmm.
So next we have Skin Invasion. Creepy as all get out, first of all.
That art is so crazy.
Good God, it's so creepy. It is a 1 red mana uncommon aura. It's an enchant creature. Enchanted creature attacks each combat if able. If the enchanted creature dies, return Skin Invasion to the battlefield transformed under your control, where it is a 3/4. Just a 3/4 Skin Shredder. Look at that thing. That thing was on a human. That thing was sucking the blood and doing the thing. It wants you to die. That's what it does. It wants you to die.
Yeah, and it's a really cool effect, especially just being able to put it on a creature that you don't want your opponent, or your opponent doesn't want to be going into combat with, and just becomes a creature itself. So it's such good card advantage if it works out, right? Because you're able to kill something that you normally wouldn't be able to, and it also is just a creature. So it's a really slow Shriek Maw.
Sure. I mean, and you could also put this on your opponent's creatures. And then when
That's
it dies,
what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So you can put it on your opponent's creatures, you can put it on yours, or you can put it on yours just to try to get through the defenses or whatever. It's sure, kill my whatever, and then I'll get a 3/4. Or I put it on yours, you come at me, I kill your stuff, then I get a 3/4. It's good on good.
Mm-hmm.
Card is sweet, super creepy. Seriously, look at the eyes of that guy.
Yeah, it is an absurd card.
That's gross. All right. So we were back with Village Messenger. Let's go back on track. Village Messenger, the 1 red, 1/1 haste guy. This is your monastery, mentor. There was the goblin that if it attacked, it would get a +1/+1 counter, and then it had menace and that type of thing. Like, are these cards good enough for constructed? They always felt like they really weren't.
I don't think so. I mean, like there's a lot of these kind of effects, and I feel that after Monastery Swiftspear, we're going to see a drop in red cards because we've seen an uptick in white ones. And I feel like if you look over the past like 5 or 6 years, one has ruled the aggressive elements. And right now I feel like we're in the white era where that's going to be the hyper aggressive deck of the format. And then red will slowly like tick back in maybe next year.
Sure. Well,
so right now it's a bad day to be a red mage.
Well, sure. I mean, and if you're in the red-white aggressive deck, it is nice to have a 1-drop that doesn't completely suck.
Yeah.
Like, this is a 1-drop that isn't, like, embarrassing, which is nice.
Because on the play, it should flip, right? Not everyone's going to have a 1-drop.
Right, exactly. Play it, attack, go, and then they play their land, say go, and then all of a sudden you have a 2/2 menace, and that's terrific. And you just keep playing things, and you're good to go. Regardless, let's go on to Avacyn's Judgment. This is a red and a generic mana sorcery. It is rare, and it deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or players. However, it has madness of a red and X, as there's a whole cycle of these. And if Avacyn's Judgment's madness cost was paid, it deals X damage divided as you choose amongst those creatures and or players instead. Now, limited bomb seems pretty obvious to me. Like, it doesn't take a lot of madness enablers to make this thing ridiculous, and at worst, it's dealing 2 damage as you see fit. But, constructed, ...
I don't really think so. It's kind of funny because we were trying this card out in a blue-red Thing in the Ice Goggles deck. Mm-hmm. And we were just using proxies of Fall of the Titan because they were just readily available.
Sure.
And about like 5 or 6 games in, Todd was just like, "Can I just play these as Fall of the Titans?" And we discovered that Fall of the Titans is actually pretty good with Goggles. Yeah, it's actually pretty good. But it was because Avacyn's Judgment was so lackluster.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, madnessing it and getting to deal X damage all over the place. But if you think about it, that's just like a good Fireball. Like, it's a slightly better version of Fireball, but at the same time, like, creatures and planeswalkers aren't what they used to be, and just dividing a bunch of damage doesn't actually kill that many things. Especially in a format these days where 2-drops, 3-drops, all are 2/3s. So you're going to need 7 mana to take 2 creatures out when, with Fall of the Titan, for example, you only need 4 mana to take them out.
Right. Well, for example, there's also a lot of mana cost sometimes in discarding cards. For all these madness enablers, quote unquote, cost like a black mana, they cost a generic mana or whatever. And so you got that on top of whatever you have to pay on top of that. But again, I mean, it's not like, you're not going to play it in your limited deck. It's probably just not going to be like the all-star that it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you're also telling me is that it fuels delirium.
It does. It fuels delirium, causes madness.
Just saying. Blood Mad Vampire is a red and 2 generic mana 4/1, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. However, it also has madness of a red and a generic mana. So for 2 mana, if you get it for madness, you got a 4/1 that could come into play at the end of their turn, ideally, and then you hit them and it becomes a 5/2. But as usual, these type of sort of glass cannon-esque creatures are dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, they are, but at the same time, this card has madness, which is phenomenal, and it's going to be able to go off of a different trigger, like Heir of the vampire, the black vampire, or something along those lines, and be the trigger they need. Also be a 4-power creature, and it is a glass cannon, but it's a surprise glass cannon that can get in front of a 4/4.
Right. I mean, it's the surprise part that makes it better than, like, if it didn't have madness on it, we would be like, it's not very good. It's just going to be chump, blah, blah, blah. But having that surprise factor really pushes it over the top.
Yeah, I think the card is very playable.
Absolutely. Burn from Within is a really interesting download. Look, they've made a lot of Fireball-esque variants. You know, they made Demon Fire and all other sorts of craziness. And here we have Burn from Within, the latest in this kind of trend of X spells that just keep getting better and better. It is red X. It is a rare sorcery. It deals X damage to target creature or player. However, if a creature is dealt damage this way, it loses indestructible until end of turn. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So no matter how BA you think your creature is, this thing is going to kill it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like the burn spell that Chandra learned how to use last world to finally like kill the Eldrazi.
Right.
And so like now it's been actually made, and yes, Fall of the Titans was that, but being able to just kill something indestructible is really cool, except for the fact that indestructible things often are gigantic.
This is true. Well, often, so okay, you play like your 10 mana Ulamog or whatever, and I'm like, well, if I get to 11,
yeah,
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, after two lands or Planeswalker and a land have been blown up.
Right, and this is also one of those cards that if it kind of allows the development team to make a indestructible creature maybe a little bit more pushed than they normally would. It's like, well, I mean, because now you have the answer to it, right? Like you've got,
but we still have like Crackling Doom effects and like slaughter from or to the slaughter and
right.
and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just a cool variant. I feel like we're running out of ways to make fireballs. We're 2 cards in non-flip cards and 2 of them are fireballs that do two different things. You know, like,
we need all these fireballs.
Run out of cool things to put on them when they want one in every single set.
It's like here's the Madness Fireball. Here's the Kills Indestructible Creatures Fireball.
Red really is going to have a tough time getting all that damage dealt, so here's a lot of fireballs to make sure you win the games.
Right, here's Bane Fire, here's Demon Fire, like, we get it. There's lots of ways to deal X in red.
Yeah.
However, again, easy bomb and limited, you're always going to play this. You can easily first pick this with no problem. It's just that, it's just kind of silly in the realm of design for red X spells. Dance with Devils is next. It's a red and 3 generic mana uncommon instant that puts 2 1/1 red devil creature tokens onto the battlefield. They have, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So, first of all, I kind of expected this to be a sorcery, and I'm really glad, obviously, that it's an instant, and it makes it much, much better that way, of course, because now it can take down a 4 toughness creature, or it could easily chump block and then deal your opponent 2 damage, which could very well be the last 2 points you needed to get in the alpha swing next turn. So this card has a lot of versatility.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. And it seems deceiving, but this card is like designed to trade, and it could potentially trade with 2 cards, which is really nice out of a red spell.
Right.
And just being able to be that instant speed card that you can hold up and be able to trade with things is something that a blue might also want. So this card could potentially pair really well with blue. Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is one of those spells that I'm pretty happy having. There's going to be a rare variant that we'll see here in a little while. But ultimately, like any type of creature that when it dies, it deals damage to a creature or player is almost always fantastic because you just get value on top of the fact that it was a creature in the first place.
Yeah, Wizards finds it worthy to just make 2 of these for 4 mana.
Oh, we're going to make more later, buddy. We're just getting started.
Next.
Oh, it's Devil's Playground. So you can, you got the jump on me because I don't have the full spoiler. I only have 1 card at a time.
Yeah.
Devil's Playground, however, is 2 red, 4 generic mana for a rare sorcery that puts 4 of those 1/1 red devil creature tokens on the battlefield. And when they die, of course, they deal a damage. So all of a sudden it gets better. How balmy in terms of rare for limited is this?
Well, I don't think it's going to run away with the game because like a cluttered board can hold it back. So I mean, it's a good rare. I'm pretty sure it's first pickable, but it's not going to win the game on its own. It's going to help create a win, but it's not going to just then my opponent drew Devil's Playground and I couldn't beat it.
Right. I mean, basically you have to interact with the devil creatures in some way in order for it to do something. So it's not like they resolved Devil's Playground and I scooped. It's just they resolved Devil's Playground. I was at 4. That's a problem.
Well, yeah, if your opponent's at 4 or lower, it is going to be a problem. But at the same time, like this is just going to help like whittle away at a board position, and also like one of these devils is going to be able to go along with another creature to take something out. It's going to help keep your board position safe while decimating your opponents.
Yeah, absolutely. And
makes combat really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason this wasn't an instant. Like, it would be a huge, ridiculous blowout, basically.
Yeah.
Dissension in the Ranks is next. It is a 2 red, 3 generic mana, uncommon instant. Target blocking creature fights another target blocking creature. That's really cool and flavorful. I mean, it's a sweet removal spell in red, but it's basically a 2-for-1.
As long as they're blocking with 2 creatures.
Well, as long as they're blocking with 2 creatures, as long as those creatures have power equal to the toughness, so on and so forth. But, ultimately, this looks like and feels like what it's supposed to be is a bomb uncommon removal spell.
Yeah, it is a very good red situational 2-for-1, which is really cool because they don't want to just give like a cone cone in flames to red anymore because we know that they're too busted.
Yeah, those things are ridiculous.
Yeah, but this seems like a very good trick that your opponent can play around or choose not to, depending on board position or if they've seen it before. But it's going to create really interesting attack steps, which is kind of a cool thing in Magic. Like, after playing this game for a really long time, I love it when I can get into new and unique board states that I haven't seen before as a Magic player.
Right.
And this is one of those cards that's going to allow that.
Right. I mean, and this is one of those cards that, as like just sort of your humdrum Joe Blow Magic player, it's weird, it's crazy, it came out of nowhere, but I really find it fascinating when like pros start playing on the Pro Tour and they're like, okay, either they saw Dissension in the Ranks or they just have to respect it and they say, well, if they have it, I'm not going to block this way. Those are those types of decisions that like regular Magic players just don't think about.
Yeah, and just get blown out.
Well, yeah, because we're regular Magic players. We don't think about your 5 mana that's untapped over there. And we've never seen Dissension in the Ranks the whole match, so we're sure it doesn't exist. And then we die. Dual Shot is a 1 red common instant that deals 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. So the shock gets better. It can hit up to 2 creatures, which is fine, but it can't hit a player and a creature. That's too good for 1 red mana. But at least, it can kill those tokens, no problem.
Yeah, it's a really unique card. I feel like this is here to help get rid of like spirits that are coming back from creatures that are dying, or there are a decent amount of X1s in the format, but
the fact that it's instant is good. I mean, there are a lot of spirit tokens that we saw.
Yeah, and it's going to allow cards to trade up. For example, like you can attack a 2/2 into their 3/3 if they have a 1/1, and you can clean the board up and you don't lose cards.
Right.
So that's probably where this card's going to be greatest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just being able to turn, it's not going to 2-for-1 that often, but it might 2-for-2 quite often.
Sure, and I mean, and I appreciate the 3 Dads gaming over there. We could just call this card Pew Pew.
Exactly, yeah.
Pew pew. He goes Pew Pew. That said, it's also very cool in Pauper. Just going to note, it is a common card. Dude,
Evan, what is this?
We're going down this road, dude.
I missed a set review with you last time you started playing Pauper, and now just mono Pauper, dog?
Just mono Pauper. You know why? Because it's a format that dads can afford. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I just bought like 8 mythics because reasons, and it's like, well, all right, well, I watched some cartoons today and bought some commons. Seems okay. Like, well, I got my 4 Jaces thing, and I even got a 5th Jace because who cares? You're like, I'm drying my eyes with $100 bills right now. That's how we roll. Anyway, Dual Shot, cool card, easily playable. I don't see this hitting constructed anytime soon, but I like that it exists.
Yeah.
Ember Eye Wolf is a red and a generic mana for a 1/2 that has haste. However, it's a mana sink because it has a red and generic mana colon. Ember Eye Wolf gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it's good early and it's good late.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not the best in the early turns, but like I could just see this being one of these like fringe cards. I don't think it's that good.
Right.
But like you could just die to it at any time.
Yeah.
Like, just real late in the game, with 8 mana, just be like, whoop, Drew Ember Eye Wolf, get ya. Take 8.
Yeah, I mean, just out of nowhere. I mean, I think that's really sweet because, its cost is the same as its activation ability, and I don't think you want to run a ton of them, but I certainly would run maybe at least 1 in any red aggro deck for sure.
Yeah, it can get you out of a lot of situations that no other card could.
Yeah, and able to take down creatures that you're normal, like little tiny dorks that you've been playing the whole game, and now you're in the late game, and they've got like a flip werewolf, and you're like, how in the world am I getting through that thing? Oh, yeah, this guy. Rawr, get you. Ember Eye Wolf is totally sweet. Also, the art's totally awesome. It's just a roar of the flames, buddy. That's what it's doing.
Yeah.
Falcon Wrath Gorger is next. 1 red for a 2/1 rare Vampire Berserker. Each vampire creature card you own that isn't on the battlefield has madness equal to its mana cost. So how about the best Savannah line ever?
Yeah, I mean it's a red Savannah line with an upside. I remember when Tetherman Maniac came out, we were losing our minds.
Yep.
And now this is just giving an entire tribe madness. And we're not really that interested. Like, now we're at the point where, like, how good does a Savannah Lines have to be for us to actually want to play with it?
Wizard, you can do better for 1 mana.
Yeah, because, like, I was trying these vampire decks out, and if it costs 1 or 2 and doesn't fly, it's not worth it. Like, these cards are just not that powerful.
Right. I mean, when Asamaru, Hound of Khanda, came out, a 1 white 2/2 that's a legend, everyone freaked out. Oh my god, this card is amazing. It's great. It saw lots of constructed play in aggressive decks at the time. And then Tattermunch Maniac comes out, and Flores names his article, Yes, Really? Like, seriously, that was the name of his article that day. And here we are going like, it only helps a whole tribe do a thing, and whatever. I'll play it in limited.
Yeah, it's absurd. But I mean, the biggest reason is why, like, you look at this format and, like, there's Sylvan Advocates and Night of the White Orchids.
Right.
And so these Vampire Tribe decks, or even, like, if you're trying to build, like, a Sly variant of a, like, let's say a Tarka Red, you're trying to play it even though it's long dead.
Right.
They just don't match up with the creatures being played. And we don't have a Lightning Strike. We can play Oath of Chandra to try to take out these 2/3s. But, like, why? Like, why are we doing this instead of just something else?
Yeah, that's gross. No Lightning Strike, no Lightning Bolt in the format is really weird.
I mean, I like it because we have Fiery Temper,
right,
and that can do some really cool things with Madness, but it's just being hyper aggressive just isn't really working out in Standard. The best I've seen is like a White Weenie variant, but even that's just like, it's not like dominant.
Well, you got a lot of the creatures are really pushed so hard that the colors that were traditionally like, okay, the pushed creatures are in these colors. Well, now they're in all the colors.
Yeah, and I mean we are going to see a 3/1 for 1 mana be good and be playable, honestly, if they want hyper aggressive decks to be good again, because like Swift Spear, yes, it was a 1/2, but it was more than that.
Sure.
And like, they're going to have to push more than just a 2/1 or a 2/2 body on these 1-drops if they want them to be very good. And I don't think they do. I don't think that's where they want Magic to go, because it doesn't actually create good Magic. Like a Tarka Red variants aren't good Magic. They're just good strategies to exploit everything people are doing. But I'd rather play, more turns against my opponent, win or lose, than just like either stop their initial swarm or not. And this card doesn't even get that initial swarm through.
So what you're saying is that you are the gatekeeper of what is good Magic.
No, I said that. I was giving my opinion, sir. And
I'm just giving you crap, dude.
I am the gatekeeper of good Magic, and Popper isn't good Magic. What? Bring it.
You know what, dude? I'm the Keymaster, so deal with it. All right?
Keymaster?
Dude, have you watched Ghostbusters, for God's sake?
I don't remember things. It's all magic up here.
Obviously.
Everything's just leaves.
Fiery Temper is next. A good old classic reprint. It's 2 red and a generic mana for a common instant that deals 3 damage to a creature or player, but its madness cost is just a single red, which means you're going to get your Lightning Bolt, which means Jace is going to be able to cast Lightning Bolts. And as we mentioned before on Jace, if you use Jace, if you tap and you discard a madness cards go to exile by default. They do not hit the graveyard at any point ever. I was reading Ricky Hayashi's tweet about this, where he was like, look, if you discard it and it has madness, it's going to the exile zone and giving you that chance to play it. So that's happening. Regardless, this does feel like a format-defining burn spell, basically for Standard. Like, this is going to be the burn spell that you think of when people like play a Mountain on turn 1, and you have to be ready for it. Or if they play a Jace on turn 2, and they have any sources of red mana, you're going to have to think about it. I mean, am I wrong there?
I don't think it's going to be format defining. I think it's going to be a role player in decks that want madness, like blue, for example. Red really feels like a role player card, like a support color, than it does feel like a base color right now. Like, we do have, like, for example, we have Chandra Flamecaller.
Yes.
Very good finisher, but the cards to get you to Chandra Flamecaller have often not been actually red. So we have this shift where there were a lot of red-based decks for a while, and right now, I don't think that's the case because these cards just don't feel like they stand alone compared to other colors.
Hmm.
So I feel like we're gonna have Fiery Temper be alongside cards like Tormenting Voice, Jace, um, Lightning Axe, and those cards don't really fit into a generically red deck.
Fair enough. I mean, there's also, as Chad mentioned, was Draconic Roar. I mean, that card still exists.
Yeah, but you have to play with dragons.
But dragons are sweet.
I mean, they were sweet. Now they're kind of outdated. I mean, like
Oh, I see how it is.
Thunderbreak Region is really good, but that boy can get his wings clipped, which is a very good answer to Thunderbreak Region now. And Thunderbreak Region often was good against green deck, so if Thunderbreak gets played more, they have their own edict effect for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so let's move on from Fiery Temper, and we'll talk about Flameblade Angel. This is one of the intro pack set rares, which means it's usually terrible. They put really bad rares in the intro pack rares. It's a 2 red, 4 generic mana, flying 4/4. It's a rare angel that whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, you may have Flameblade Angel deal 1 damage to that source's controller. So in the sort of the classic vein of intro pack rares, amazing in limited, terrible in constructed, ...
Yep.
That's all we got.
Yeah, I've got. I mean, I've seen so many 6 mana 4/4s that have an ability. They're all good.
Yes, we have, Brad. We've seen lots of 6 mana 4. You know what we have seen? We've seen 7 mana 5/5s that give things flying
Yeah, but like,
for no reason.
what am I supposed to say? It's all on the card. It just wins the games if it stays in play. I'm here to help on the more difficult cards. Like this one is just going to win the game.
It's just going to do a thing in its stuff because whenever it's a source like creatures or whatever, it's ridiculous. All right,
Or permanent you control. It just that's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. Permanent you control. So any creatures that are blocking for you, like all of a sudden trigger this, like it's nuts. That card is bananas. Geist Blast is next. It's a red and 2 generic mana uncommon instant that deals 2 damage to target creature or player. However, for a blue and 2 generic mana, exile it from your graveyard to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So you pay 3 mana to fork something. I think this is what we're seeing very similarly to almost a lot of there's spells over time that Wizards kind of slowly realizes is not that powerful. Fork is one of those spells that like it was crazy back in the day, and no one had it, and you couldn't play Fork, and then all of a sudden there was the blue Fork, and then people were blowing their minds over that one, and that wasn't that good, and then they're trying to just like put Fork in wherever. So I think it's there was Reiterate where you could buy it back. I think it was. There's all these Fork variants, and now they're putting Fork on an uncommon that you can trigger at any time from the graveyard. It's like, whenever you feel like it, you might want to Fork something.
Which I think is the best place to be because of it, like the whole idea of copying a spell as a spell is hilarious to me because like just for the counter aspect, right?
Sure.
Because you can counter the fork or just the copy that it makes.
Mm-hmm.
So I love how these just exile and aren't spells, but you can still technically counter that.
Right.
Actually, yeah, you can blow them out, right?
Well, I mean, this is an uncounterable because it's exiling Geist Blast, and then it is a triggered effect at that point.
And so you can counter the original, and then you don't get it either.
You can counter the original, and it's just going to sit in your graveyard, and then until you use it for a second effect. So that's a thing. But
No. I mean the copy. Like you exile it, and then target a spell, and then if they counter that original spell, you don't get it. Just like the other forks, yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, it has to go on the stack. It has to resolve.
I'm going off on a tangent about it. I think this card is good, especially in limited. Not in standard. It's good in limited because dealing 2 damage to a creature seems fine, and being able to copy a removal spell is going to allow you to 2-for-1 later in the game.
Right. I mean, you're gonna build up to that, and your opponent, if your opponent plays this, you're gonna be very aware of that this exists, and understand that like all the removal spells now cost a blue and 2 generic mana more because they're gonna want to use Geist Blast with it.
Yeah, and I mean this card. It's funny because it's uncommon because I think it's the most playable fork in a very long time because. You don't really want to put a fork into your limited deck because it's a fork. Like you never know if it's actually going to happen, but because you just get to trade with a creature
Right.
earlier and then it's just all upside later in the game, it makes it playable, which is cute to me.
Yeah, I mean, like they made it playable because they put it on another spell that's playable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Gibbering Fiend is next. It's a red and a generic mana for a 2/1 uncommon devil, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage. What? When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, for some reason that read weird. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals 1 damage to that player. So it hits them, and it keeps hitting them as long as you have Delirium. This is certainly a card that can end games slowly but surely.
Yeah, these ping effects, the same with the curse, the black curse, feel like if there's a board stall, you just by being in play, it forces the opponent to take the initiative, which can sometimes just be the win all in itself.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a devil bear, right? Little devil bear.
I don't see any bear.
Well, this has got like a tail, and he's kind of running on all fours in a way, except he's got a
Isn't
knife.
that already? Isn't that devils already? Don't devils already have tails?
I mean, I'm not saying he grew one for the card or anything. All right, we're going to move on. It's a good card, though. I think this card is absolutely playable and limited. I love it as a 2-drop. I love it as a finisher. I love that this thing in multiples would be completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then when it dies, it fuels delirium.
It does feel delirious. Well, I feel like it and the other 13, 14 creatures you're playing
Right.
are taking up that slot.
They also fuel it. Now, Gold Knight Castigator is a 2-red, 2 generic mana mythic angel. It is a 4/9 with flying and haste. However, if a source would deal damage to you, it deals double that damage. If a source would deal damage to Gold Knight Castigator, it deals double that damage. However, it's got a huge butt. Becky would be proud. And so we have a 4/9 flying haste. It enters the battlefield. You're turning it sideways. Better or worse than Thunderbreak Regent?
Depends. It's very matchup dependent. I feel like Thunderbreak is more of a main deckable card, where this card could be a sideboard option. When you need more threats. I would, my gut would say to play Thunderbreak Regent week 1. I don't really know what people are going to be doing,
Sure.
but a 4/9 does it is hard to kill, and
I mean, if you want to furnace of wrath yourself, here's a way to do it.
yeah, but that's the problem is a lot of those types of effects aren't really tend to be good and constructed.
Right. Well,
Because constructed, all the decks are so lean. In limited, yes, this card is very playable in limited.
yeah, in limited, it's fantastic. You got to be aware of it, and you got to be kind of you kind of got to be a little bit more afraid of either removal spells or cards that tap your creatures, so they don't like bum rush you. But regardless, I mean, it's a 4-mana 4/9 flyer with haste. I mean, and that's a thing, and you're going to win games because of it. In constructed, I don't know. I could see it, but I don't know, man. That's a lot of risk for that reward.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like it might just end up being a sideboard card.
Yeah, fair enough. Harness the Storm is next. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a rare enchantment that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast target card with the same name as that spell from your graveyard. However, you still need to pay the costs. The most important part of this card is that it does not exile the card that you copied. So when you play Lightning Bolt and you pay another red to play the one from your graveyard, the one in your graveyard doesn't go away. That's huge. Wizards always does that, where it's just like now these recursive creatures can block. Well, now these things that are being played from your graveyard are just staying in your graveyard. So
I guess that helps out with like flashback, like Jace.
yeah.
But outside of that, isn't it the same? Like if I have a lightning bolt in my graveyard and I play a lightning bolt and exile that lightning bolt, now I still have a lightning bolt.
Well, yeah, but you don't have to exile either of them, is what I'm trying to explain.
No, I know, but it's not that much upside, is it?
Well, no. I mean, that's the problem. Like, here's the problem with this type of card. First of all, it's obviously unplayable in Commander because you're never going to be able to copy anything because there's never more than one copy. Lols. And so then you go, okay, well, limited. Limited is terrible because you're not going to get enough copies to hardly do anything ever. Maybe that one time when you drew both copies of a spell that you got, whatever. And so then you go, all right, constructed. So there's casual constructed, which I think is probably where this is going to end up because competitive constructive, either this card is broken or it is terrible. There is no middle ground for this card.
Yeah, and I mean I'm on the side of terrible because just having a card in my deck that needs a second copy that I also have to pay for. It's just the investment is just too large.
Right.
Like,
So
what spell am I trying to utilize this card with? And I can't even think of any that I just would put this deck or this card into my deck for so I can copy it.
you're right. I appreciate it. I don't know, like if this thing's going to be a storm card again. It's busted or it's terrible. Like there's no middle ground on this card. Howlpack Alpha, I'm sorry, Howlpack Wolf is a red and 2 generic mana 3/3. So it's a 3 mana 3/3. It's a common wolf that cannot block unless you control another wolf or werewolf. So it can attack for free. It's a 3 mana 3/3. So that means this card is amazing in aggressive decks.
Yeah, this is just really good, and just even if it said it can't block, it would still be really playable because a 3/3 for 3 is a great rate.
Right.
But because there's so many wolves and werewolves in the format, it's going to be able to block probably by the turn it comes into play. So I think that this is a big thumbs up card. Very good in the werewolf themed decks, but also serviceable in any other strategy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I want to turn this guy sideways. So, like, okay, it can't block. You got me. Like, if it had said you can't attack unless you control another wolf or werewolf, we would be having a totally different conversation about how terrible this card is.
Yeah.
And instead, we're saying this card is fantastic because you just want to play it, you want to turn it sideways. Who cares if we can't block? Hulking Devil is next. It is a good old-fashioned red and 3 generic mana 5/2 common devil. Okay. Bad.
I mean, it is definitely playable, but it's not that good.
How playable is it? Tell me the scale of playability here.
It's like a 2. It might make your deck if you need a 4-drop or something with high power. It's a card that you can board in against like green-red fatty decks.
Okay.
Like if your opponent has a lot of good creatures, you bring cards like this in so that you just have ways to threaten those creatures.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, it's got some applications, which is nice. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of these really late in draft, and you're probably not going to be too excited to put them in your sealed deck unless you really need it there.
Yeah.
Incorrigible Youths. Now, this was kind of the mirror to the Arrogant Worm from back in Odyssey Block, where it was a 5 mana 4/4 trampler. This is a 2 red 3 generic mana 4/3 haste that has madness of a red and 2 generic mana, like that one had a madness of a green and 2 generic mana. So a 5 mana 4/3 haste that madness is out for red and 2 generic mana. That's fantastic. This is like one of those cards that they pushed, and one of those cards that could this actually get there and constructed?
Oh no, I think that it's actually not pushed. I think it's they wanted to make the throwback to Arrogant Worm, but like Magic is just different. And so, no, this card is not good and constructed.
Oh, well, it is
It's
good and
very
limited,
slow.
which is good.
Yeah, it seems great and limited. I mean, it's a 4/3. It has madness, so you can like flash it in.
Sure.
And because vampires have all of these enablers that want discard outlets anyway, like you will just be playing a lot of like black red decks that are going to want madness, but this card can come down very fast and be really good to your strategy, but also late game it's still just a 4/3, so it's like not the worst stats either.
Right, and I will note that they did make Reckless Worm in Time Spiral. Thank you, chat, for that, which was, again, just an Arrogant Worm in red. However, I would also note that there's not nearly as many madness outlets in Time Spiral as there are now in Standard, so that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I will just agree with you. I think there were quite a few then too.
There were many, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, this one has a lot of cards that are, like,
Way more,
activated and
yeah.
discard. You know, like, it is an active thing they want to make happen versus, like, here's a mechanic that came back. Check out this really cool callback to this old, this old card, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Regardless, Inner Struggle is next. It's a red and 3 generic mana, uncommon, instant. Target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. Awesome artwork, sweet red removal spell. I love the fact that it's an instant. You can wait till somebody tries to use a combat trick on their guy or whatever, and they're like, oops, he killed himself. The end.
Or it's just going to take out some and I love that like there isn't a ton of higher toughness than power creatures out there except for maybe like say white and blue. Black has a few, but I guess green does too. I mean they all have a few, but there are a lot of like 4/3s, 4/4s, and like 5/5s, even 6/6s that
Right.
and especially the bombs and the rares all died to Inner Struggle.
Yeah, I mean that's great. This is a card that answers a lot of problems and does so in like a really kind of clever way, which is sweet. Insolent Neonate is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, this card's great.
First of all, that stance, that kind of like lay him back with the chest open and like the crotch hanging out, like
Well, and the flavor text just sells this card.
yeah, manners are for mortals. All right, so for a red mana, you have a common vampire that's a 1/1 with menace. If you want to discard a card and sacrifice Insolent Neonate, you may draw a card. So for free, you get a Madness Outlet. However, you have to give up your 1-drop, but your 1-drop does have menace, so that's a thing. Wizards is like, okay, how many things must we make this do in order for you to consider to play it?
I think that is enough, especially since it's going to be a free Madness Outlet that this card might get in some early damage. Put something that doesn't deserve to be in play as quickly as it is into play and potentially eat one of their creatures. So effectively, you're like, ritualing out your incorrigible youths on turn 3 when it should have been at least turn 4 or 5.
Right.
And it might even eat your opponent's 2/2. So that right there, that's a fine rate trade.
Yeah, I mean, and again, on your first turn, like you're in the red aggressive deck, you want something to do. I'm glad that they pushed it at least about as far as they could push it.
Yeah.
Which was nice. And it still lets you draw a card and lets you madness things. That's sweet. Lightning Axe returns from Time Spiral block. It's a red mana for an uncommon instant that as an additional cost to cast it, you discard a card or pay 5 colorless mana, 5 generic mana if you will, and it deals 5 damage to target creature. So at worst, you could pay 6 mana to deal 5 damage to a creature. I have done that before in Time Spiral block. It's worth it. It doesn't matter. If it kills a thing, it kills a thing. It's what you needed to do. Of course, in here, you want it to be all madness all the time, and this is a great enabler plus a removal spell.
Yeah, you definitely want the Madness Outlet since there's so much madness
Right.
in the format, but sometimes if you draw it late in the game, you don't have the land to tap out. Like it's still for 6 mana, it's a decent rate to kill something that's big. So this is just a wonderful. I'm assuming it's a first pickable card.
It certainly feels that way.
Yeah, I feel like this is just a first pick slam dunk if you don't have a great rare, and it might even be better than some of the rares in the set.
I mean, it answers a lot of problems. It enables the mechanic you want to enable in the color. Yeah. There's a lot of upside to Lightning Axe. And again, it was great back in Time Spiral. It's going to be just as good here.
Mm-hmm.
Mad Prophet is here. It comes back from, I believe it's Avacyn Restored. It is a red and 3 generic mana 2/2. It's haste. It's tap, discard a card, and then draw a card. So by himself, he has given you all these sweet madness triggers to be enabled. He's providing you card draw at the same time. So he was okay back then, but now he just seems really good.
No, yeah, this card, it might be a little slow. The body's pretty bad, but it is going to be a madness enabler. And it is nice to loot extra lands away as well. So I feel like this was maybe like a later pick and has become more of a middling to an early pick, but not like I don't think it's like first, second, or third.
Right. And so the chat's just like old Evan equals Mad Prophet.
It is the most realistic art of the set too, in my opinion.
It is very realistic art. Not of me, but of
Well, no, this
of
guy's
a
got
dude.
hair.
Oh, wow. Man, did we just go there?
Yeah.
Fine.
We did.
We did, Magmatic Chasm. Bah. Fine. Magmatic Chasm is a red and generic mana, common sorcery. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. There's all sorts of falter type effects. Here is yet another one. This is the type of card, we've seen it often over the years, where sometimes it's good, oftentimes it's not that good, but when it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's terrible. It's not a card that you want to run many in multiples most of the time, but when you're in the aggressive deck, you're going to be able to get many of these late, no problem. And you're able to, I think, push through a lot of defenses where I think players are like, all right, I got like a fatty, and I got this wall thing, or it's never going to get through, and then they play a Magmatic Chasm, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's just a good sideboard card for like a red-white or a green-red deck to get through the defensive elements, especially since the Flyers are probably going to be attacking anyway.
Right. If you're in an aggressive deck, this is the type of card you want to play, and if you're not,
I would still sideboard it. I mean, unless it's very specific, because like, what if your opponent just has a couple Flyers blocking?
Well, I mean, and it certainly could. I don't know. I've had different types of experiences with these types of effects. Sometimes I've main decked them and they've been amazing, and then other times I main deck them and I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, same, because they're just, I mean, they're very hot. They're situationally good or bad. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, but it is
Variants,
the
you
best
say?
art. Yeah, it is variants, and it is the best art of this effect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've never seen a horse do that.
Well, I've never seen a wave of lava.
But that looks amazing. It's really sweet. It kind of curls over, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Malevolent Whispers has some of the best art. I swear to God, I'm pretty sure Greg Staples used his own face in some ways that looks very similar to Greg Staples, the artist
Yeah.
himself. Like, obviously, the mouth and the eyes are all cray cray, but, you know, this looks very much like Greg Staples. It is a fantastic facial expression. It is a red and 3 generic mana uncommon sorcery. It can gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. You can madness this for a red and 3 generic mana. So it's, you know, yet a million different variants of threaten. This is
But it's
another
Ray of
variant.
Command.
But it's Ray of Command in it because it's 4 mana and it's giving them the bonus and all the other good stuff, which is great. I mean, these spells, like, this is a sorcery, and that's kind of a big deal, but Madness lets it be played as not a sorcery.
Yeah, and the +2/+0 is very important because Turn Against was a card, but not getting that bonus of +2/+0 made it difficult to 2 for 1 your opponent. But because you get that, I do feel like when this is Madness, it is going to blow a lot of opponents out.
Yeah, this is one of the like premier uncommons, I think. Now, not only because it was great before it had Madness stuck on the bottom of it, now it's got Madness down there, and it's terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card is great. Pyrehound is a red and 3 generic mana 2/3 common elemental hound that has trample, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So
I think it's great.
I think this card has a lot of potential, and this is the type
Yeah.
of card that, you know, as you were talking about, you know, maybe there's decks that want a lot of instants and sorceries. Maybe you can kind of get there.
Well, yeah, they put them in the set for a reason.
Nuh-uh. That's not why they put them in there.
They kind of pre-construct decks for us sometimes.
Shh, God, don't tell me how to play Magic. You ain't the
They
boss
do.
of me. Yeah.
Kind of am.
Shut up, Brad. Fuels delirium. All right. Ravenous Bloodseeker is next. And what was Aquamoeba was the 1/3 for a blue and a generic mana back in Odyssey. And now they have basically color shifted it over to a red and a generic mana for a 1/3. It's an uncommon vampire berserker. You discard a card to give it +2/-2. A free madness enabler. Feels like a very high pick in limited because this is the card that enables all of your sweet madness cards to be amazing for free.
Yeah, this sort of card does seem a lot better in limited than constructed, and that's because this card has been put into a lot of constructed vampire decks,
Sure.
and it's just not that good.
Right.
It's pretty bad, actually. It's actively bad. A 1/3 for 2 is not good enough for the format, especially for a deck that's trying to be aggressive. But I will say that this does look very good for the super synergy-driven black-red decks.
I like synergy.
I like synergy in limited, too.
I like upward mobility. I like vertical markets and, you know, all that good stuff. My corporate synergistic realm. Okay. I think you're always going to play this in limited because I think it just makes all your madness cards amazing. And whenever you have cards in your hand and you attack with it, they have to deal with the fact that it could be a 3/1 or just understand that all of your madness cards could come out at any point in time. That's a big deal.
Yeah, they have to respect all of them.
Reduce to Ashes is next. It's a good old-fashioned common red removal spell. It's a red and 4 generic mana for a common sorcery. Reduce to Ashes deals 5 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, you exile it instead. So you kill a thing. It's 5 mana, kill a thing. It's 5 mana, kill a
I agree.
Kill a thing.
Yeah, it is. It is a magic card that they printed over and over again. It'll
Wow.
kill almost everything.
And then it'll exile it.
It'll exile it, and sometimes that's relevant.
Because when it exiles it, then it doesn't
It doesn't get to exile itself.
fuel.
Oh, no,
No!
no,
No!
bad Evan.
Oh, dang it. It's a good card. Whatever. Rush of Adrenaline is next. It's no brute force, but what is? It's a red common instant. It's gross. 1 red, common instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. So you only get 1 toughness boost, but you get trample and you get a big foot in the face. That's what you're getting. Foot in the face.
It could be good. I'll have to see. There's a lot of 2/4s in the format, so like a 2/2, a 3/3, and another 2/4, for example, will kill the 2/4.
Sure.
So that is nice in itself. That +2/+1 is probably just a very relevant pump in this format.
Sure.
But that said, pump spells have not been that great lately in limited. So I mean, I think it'll see play in certain decks, but you're not going to want a ton of these effects. But always playing one isn't that bad.
Yeah, I mean it's fine as like a trick. I mean, tricks are as tricks do and whatever, but like ultimately only pumping one point of toughness. I know it sounds kind of petty, I guess, in a way, but like it's so huge. If this was +2/+2, it would be a totally different, like better card.
Yeah, but white gets that one.
Yeah, white gets that one, as they should. And
Hmm.
red gets to trample on your face with a shoe. Okay.
And a pitchfork.
Yeah, with pitchfork in tow, as it should be. Sanguinary Mage is a red and a generic mana 1/3. It's a common vampire wizard with prowess. Okay.
Much like Mage Ring Bully, but must not. It doesn't have to attack every turn. And another card that might work really well in the blue-red prowess deck.
Really?
I mean, it's a 1/3 for two that whenever you play a spell, it can become a 2/4. So it can like attack pretty early into the game. And
Well, I mean, it's a color shifted Jeskai student. Thank you, chat. Jeskai student was a white and a generic mana for a 1/3 with prowess. We
yeah, that
weren't
card wasn't
singing.
that good.
I know we weren't singing any praises about that card. All of a sudden, it's red, and we're kind of okay with it.
Might be because red and blue stuff things,
Stuff things, things
dead
stuff.
life in the forest.
Yeah. Wow. What?
I said stuff and things. So I was thinking of Walking Dead.
Oh, I see. See, I
Have
don't.
you don't watch Walking Dead?
I stopped after the first season.
Well, you should have just skipped until season 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Skip.
just skip it all. It doesn't matter.
Who
People have
cares?
died.
Yeah, everybody dies.
Just start in season 5. Season 5 and 6 have been phenomenal.
Well, that's nice. Scourge Wolf is next. It is a 2-red 2/2 for a rare wolf horror, and it certainly looks horrific. It's a 2-mana 2/2 first strike. With Delirium, it has double strike. So this is kind of your pushed aggro red card, but is it pushed enough as just a bear, basically?
No. It'll be fine. I mean, we've had 2/2 first strikes, and once you get Delirium, yes, it's nice to have double strike, but I don't think so. I think this card is just very mediocre. It's going to give red players hope, but I just don't see it happening this time around. Like we do have a lot of good cards like Abbot of Carol Keep and Exquisite Firecraft, but there's just not enough one drops and not enough power. Maybe more mid rangey. I don't know.
I don't know. The numbers on this card are kind of weird, and honestly, just kind of, it's just not really enough. It just feels like it's
Yeah, like
close.
Dragon Whisperer isn't seen playing that card significantly better than this.
Yeah, and so if that one's not happening, this one's probably not happening. So sadness. In limited, it's very playable.
Yes, it's good and limited.
Yeah, I'm not unhappy by playing it. I want to play it in the red aggressive decks, obviously, but I wouldn't be against playing it in sealed by any means. Obviously, with pump spells, it's terrific, as long as you can get Delirium in there.
Yep.
So, Senseless Rage is next. It's a red and a generic mana for a common aura with enchant creature. The enchant creature gets +2/+2, but it has madness of a red and a generic mana. So, the key to this card is not just that it's like, a giant strength or whatever, 2 mana for +2/+2, but rather that it has madness, so you can instantly put this on one of your creatures, ideally like that Aquamoeba reprint vampire guy. Those are the types of creatures and those are the types of effects that make this card way better than just your average crappy and aura enchantment card.
Yeah, we've seen in the past that pump effects are okay to play, but the ones that stick around are very beneficial because this card with a madness outlet is going to not only be considered a combat trick but stick around. So even if it's just an added bonus, and if they deal with the creature, then yes, they technically just got a 2-for-1 there. But by killing the creature earlier in the game, it's just a trade of 2 cards each.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, like when they attack in and you play Senseless Rage and get one of their guys, then on your turn you still have that bonus. That's a good feeling right there. That's positive. All right, Sin Prodder is next. Oh boy, Sin Prodder is a red and 2 generic mana 3/2. It's a rare devil with menace. At the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library. Your opponent may then have you put that card into your graveyard. If that player does, Sin Prodder deals damage to that player equal to the card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, you put that card into your hand. So, this card was revealed. I immediately went, my God, this card is banana. Super bananas, the stone cold, the nutters and the butters. Immediately get called down by Sam Black. Immediately get called down by Kibler. Like, well, I don't think this card's very good. It's just, what's the Boggart, the 3-2, the one from Origins.
Yep.
The 3-2 Boggart from there, and it's like it's not gonna be good enough because if it doesn't do anything, it's just a 3-mana 3-2. And so I'm like, all right, I don't understand it. So I'll go over to Reddit. Reddit's losing its mind. It's calling it the Red Bob. They're calling it Rob. And like, well, what happened? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand it because part of me wants to believe this is good because then you chimed in and you're like, what? These cards good. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening anymore. I like cards, they're terrible. I don't like cards, they're amazing. Help me.
Like, I think that this card is more of an beginning of a curve card where you're going to want to play it in like a deck with Sylvan Advocates, let's say, or 2 drops with some removal spells, and then have this as a 3, and then have 4-drop Planeswalkers, maybe like Exquisite Firecrafts and Goblin Dark Dwellers and stuff of that nature. Because like if you're playing this on the top of an aggressive curve, yes, it's not that good because they're just gonna flip. You're gonna flip over a land. They're gonna obviously pay 0. You're gonna flip over a 1-drop. They're like, sure, I'll pay 1. But if you're like every time you're not hitting a land, you're hitting a 5-drop or a 4-drop. Like that is an actual test for an opponent. And yes, like you're gonna get whatever is in your opponent's best interest out of that. But it's either you get a free card or they take 4 damage, and this is still in play. So yeah, the body's not that great, but also Menace isn't the worst ability in this format, and it has the stats of a common, but it doesn't have the ability of the common. Like that's like using that argument is like saying Bob is just a 2/1, you know?
Right.
Like all creatures just have like they all have the same power and toughness of a common. It's their ability, and I think the 2 abilities on this card make it a fine 3-drop for a green-red like mid-range deck. Right, especially since you can put you can Arlen Court it, and now it's a 5/4 menace. So like you play this, they play Gideon, make a 2/2, you Arlen Court kill their Gideon. Like right. That's going to happen. Things like that are going to happen.
Sure. So is this the part where we have a pie bet?
What's the pie bet until the next set comes out?
Yep.
So you're going to take the opposite side.
You know what? I don't think it matters. I think I have literally a coin flip chance at either getting it or not getting it.
You know what? I will say that I, along with you and everyone that's watching right now, wants to see us have pie bets.
Yes.
Pie bets are exciting, but I do not want to belittle how they started, which was both of us were just animate about our side of the coin.
I see.
Okay. I am not that. I don't care about this card. You don't care about this card. I don't really want to pie bet on because when like everyone has to see the pie hit the face, but it's also the bragging rights. Like when we get to see each other when we lost like the pie bet, right?
Right.
Like that was what was worth it. So like I want to be invested in my pie bets. It doesn't have to be this card.
Yeah, and I feel like. Well, we're just not invested because it's so, again, it's just a coin flip. Whether it's good, we don't know. If it's good, I think it's going to be really good. And if it's bad, it's going to be like, well, okay, it's still great and limited.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, the end. Meh. Sin Prodder's cool, though. I err, like if I've got to err on a side, so we can go back years later and look back, I will err on the side that I think this card is good.
I will too.
I do think this card is good. Spiteful Motives is next. It's a red and 3 generic mana uncommon aura that enchants a creature. It has flash, and enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has first strike. So this is another one of those ways that they want to try to make enchant creatures not suck. However, it doesn't have like the cleverness of a madness type trigger, but it is a decent trick.
Yes, I completely agree. I think it doesn't have madness, but it has flash, which is practically the same thing. And if your opponent's tapped out, you can attack into a really big creature with a small creature and get this enchanted. So I do feel like this is going to be a very good card in hyper-aggressive strategies.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, again, if you want to turn guys sideways, it's fantastic. If you're trying to do sort of a slower deck or type mid-range, or you kind of want to ramp up to your bombs or whatever, it gets a lot worse really quickly.
I agree.
Stensia Masquerade is next. It's a red and 2 generic mana uncommon enchantment. Attacking creatures you control have first strike. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has madness of a red and 2 generic mana. So they've just pushed and pushed and pushed this thing. This is the aggressive vampire deck bomb uncommon.
I agree. I think this card is really disgusting. It's going to take over games.
Yes, like this is a card that you have to deal with. You have to be aware. Like once they play it in like the first game and completely blow you out, like you're scared to death of this card ever since.
Yeah, especially since they can discard it and everything gets first strike. Then I don't. I am not looking forward to losing to this card, but I can't wait to play it.
Yep, I can't wait to play with it. I certainly don't want to see it played against me because my lord, the blowout. This is a blowout in a can right here.
Yeah, especially with like the 1 mana menace creature,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just gets under them real fast, starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just ugh.
Oh, it's so good. This card is powerful. I love it. Structural Distortion is yet another Stone Rain. A red and 3 generic mana for a common sorcery that exiles target artifact or land. It deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller.
And that's all that has to be said about this
Yeah,
boring
this is
Magic
bad.
card.
Yeah. Card is
All right.
horrible. Don't play it. Tormenting Voice is next. It's a red and 1 generic mana for a common sorcery. As an additional cost, you discard a card and then you draw 2 cards. So this was one of the original, like, oh my god, they're giving red card draw, and then immediately comes back, well, no, it's not card draw, it's actually card filtering. And then now in Shadows of Innistrad, it's like, I don't care, it just all enables madness, so who gives a crap?
Yeah, I mean it's a really good enabler. Todd's been casting Tormenting Voice, discarding Fire Impulse on turn 3 many times and killing a creature, and it just feels gross every time.
Sure.
So I mean it's going to see a lot of play, a lot more play now than it has before.
Right, because it has an actual upside where before it really didn't. Wild Guess was another one, which was 2 red sorcery, thank you, chat, where, you know, as additional cost to cast it, you discard a card and you draw 2 cards. Again, card filtering is not card drawing, but now we have a reason.
Yeah.
Ulrich's Kindred is next with some freaky green eyes. It is a red and 2 generic mana 3/2. It's an uncommon wolf with trample, and for a green and 3 generic mana, target attacking wolf or werewolf gains indestructible until end of turn. So here is your sweet, I'm playing red, but I'm playing another color. Now I'm playing red and I'm playing green. The first one was red and blue, where you get to fork things. Now it's red and green, and you get to make your wolves or your werewolves indestructible. Because remember, that's not only just this wolf, it's any other wolf, it's any other werewolf that you have in green. This is that sort of bomb uncommon that kind of ties the deck together.
Yeah, and just makes like attacking with one big threat into theirs just impossible for them to block unless they want to eat up your mana. But I mean, you're going to be okay losing 4 mana and them losing their best creature. So like even if you're just at the point where you can't attack with a ton of creatures, just one should be enough.
Absolutely. So Uncaged Fury is next. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a common instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains double strike. This double strike is a mechanic, you know, much like sort of the fork type ability or fork spell that over time has gotten less lauded. It's gotten less like, oh my god, something has double strike, it has to be insanely rare and mythic and whatever. Now it's like, whatever, everybody can have double strike, who gives a crap?
Except for everyone that died to become Women's Team or Battle Rage for 3 months straight.
Team or Battle Rage is, I think, was the most push they ever got.
I agree.
That to me was the spell where they're
Boros
like,
Charm.
well, Boros Charm was amazing, but like Team or Battle Rage, because it kind of teamed up with so many different like power creatures in the format. That to me was the spell where it was like, yeah, to me that was the one where it's like, I think we should kind of, just pull it back a little bit.
I agree. Yeah, I like the fix, just not having trample. You're gonna have to find it somewhere else. This seems like a decent limited card. Can win the game in certain spots. Can make sure you beat up in combat. I feel like this is just going to see a lot of play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is one of those cards that I could actually see not seeing a lot of play because its bonus is a little marginal. Sometimes the double strike's amazing. Sometimes it's like, all right, I want to trade with your thing. This is my trick that isn't a +2/+1 and trample thing, but instead it's a +1/+1 and double strike thing. Okay.
I mean, I'm on the side that this card's going to be very playable and limited.
Fair enough. Vessel of Volatility is next. This is the red enchantment of the cycle. For a red and a generic mana, it's a common enchantment, and for a red and a generic sacrifice it, you add 4 red to your mana pool. Really interesting in that Wizards has shied away for a long time of giving red any type of sort of mana ramp, mana production, or whatever. And obviously you're not able to do this all in one turn, which I think is kind of the way that it balances itself out. But being able to turn 2 red or a red and a generic mana into 4 red is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, this card alone can just make a turn 4 Chandra.
Yeah, which is really sweet.
which is worth the value on its own.
Right, and what's going on in my head? I'm like, well, if I'm playing this in limited, maybe I'm playing green red, maybe I want to play a bunch of fatties. This is a card that can kind of ramp you into those big fatties.
And then they hit you once and you find a removal for it. It does cause 2-for-1s. I don't think that this card is going to be good and limited.
You're kind of all in on a thing, and if they answer the thing, you're really sad.
Yeah.
And that's
Even if it's a 5-drop on turn 3, which you can already do with Incorrigible Youths.
I know, right? Thanks,
Yeah.
Madness. You're great. Valdaran Duelist is next. It is a red and 3 generic mana, 3/2 haste. It's a common vampire warrior. When it enters the battlefield, target creature cannot block this turn. So this is one of those fantastic commons you want in your red aggressive decks, red, white, red, green, whatever, because this stops their best blocker.
Seems fine. I don't know if you want to play a ton of it because it costs 4 mana, but it might be really good at the vampire decks.
Well, there's been some 4-mana guys that are like 3/2 hasters or whatever, but now the fact that this one stops the thing that's probably going to kill it, like they have a 2/2 and whatever, and you're like, okay, then the 2/2 can't block, so now I can swing with impunity, basically. I also love the artwork. The artwork's really sweet.
Yeah, it is. It is really cool.
He's just like, whoa, unveil my cape and stab you. Bro. He has yet to find his equal. I don't know if you knew that. He can't find
I
it.
just read that.
Yes, you did.
I am now informed.
All right. Wolf of Devil's Breach is our last red card. It is 2 red, 3 generic mana for a 5/5 mythic elemental wolf. Whenever it attacks, you may pay a red and a generic mana and discard a card. If you do, Wolf of Devil's Breach deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost. Wow, that's a lot of words for what is probably going to be one of the worst mythics in a while.
Which is I don't know if I believe that. See, I agree that this card isn't good, but we haven't put it in a deck yet. No one's tested it. I need to test this card and just see it at least once that it's bad, because this card, if it's not dealt with, can just kill a planeswalker, which is
Sure.
great. It's a 5/5 for 5.
Okay.
I bought a set just because I thought $3 was too low.
I mean, it feels like it's too low. I don't know. I mean, I've seen people say this is absolutely terrible. I think it certainly looks bad and kind of feels bad in many ways. If that ability, as wordy as it is good, I mean, this is the type of text that you see on a Magic card when I think development just tried their damnedest to make this card work. They were like, it's too good when you got to just discard a card and let it do its thing. It's too good when you could only pay 1 red and let it do its thing. And now it's a red and a generic mana. So they kind of kept going and going and going. And that it tells me either they made it worse because they didn't want it to be as good as it was, or they made it worse because it was too good from what it was.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that it's the best thing ever, and it probably isn't going to be good or playable, but there's just, my gut tells me this card is functional. I mean, it's obviously a bomb in limited.
Yeah, and limited this card is ridiculous.
Yeah, but I just have to see it. Maybe it has to go into a shell we don't understand yet.
Maybe.
But I would say no. Like, if you said pie bet, I'd be like, of course not. I would never take this card. But there's something about it that I just feel that I'm missing. And maybe that's just part of the card.
Well, right, and maybe that's the part, and again, maybe the card is unbelievably awesome with something in Eldritch Moon, but I don't know, man. The numbers on this card, the abilities on this card just read super weird. I would love to be surprised. Let's put it that way.
Same.
Would love to be surprised. All right, so those are all of our red cards for Shadows over Innistrad. We are barreling our way towards the rest of the set. We have green coming up here shortly. We are going to take a short break, but we will be right back with all of the green cards. Until then, I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
And we tapped all the cards.
So you didn't have to.
That's right.